Back at it again, and I must admit, which I made no secret about this, I haven't been the biggest fan of JD Vance. Okay, obviously I felt I had some better picks than JD Vance himself, but man, I must say he is out here proving himself. I can't even lie to you. All right. Now, do I feel like my personal picks could have done the same thing? Yeah. I feel like Byron Donalds would have done a fantastic job. I think Larry Elder, we've checked out a lot of Larry Elder, and the way that he hops on shows and embarrasses people with his ability to recall like these phenomenal like statistics off the top, it's incredible. I've never seen anything like it other than Thomas Sowell. Big shout out to Thomas Sowell as well. If he was younger, I wouldn't mind seeing him as a vice president. Thomas Sowell, phenomenal individuals, obviously. But JD Vance is out here doing his thing, and I want to dive into a couple of these clips where JD Vance went on to some of these shows and absolutely embarrassed them, and performed spectacular. And I think he should continue to do it. As long as they invite him onto these shows like CNN or ABC, he should go. As a matter of fact, he should be requesting to go on these shows, be in front of people as much as possible. But with that being said, let's dive in.
And on the question of when he left the National Guard, he filed his election paperwork February 10th, 2005. That was a month before the National Guard even announced that it was possible that they would deploy to Iraq, and it ended up being 2 months. He retired 2 months before they actually got the paperwork.
But on CNN last night, Dana, one of the people who was actually in charge of him said they knew they were going to deploy to Iraq in February of 2004, fall of 2004. So he knew he was going to Iraq. He decided to quit, to retire, whatever word you want to use.
Retire.
Because he wanted to run for Congress. He lied about that. He said that when he decided to retire, he did not know that he was going to Iraq. That is another untruth, as even his senior military officer said. So again, I'm not criticizing the service. I'm criticizing the dishonesty. Dishonesty spoken in favor and for the purpose of political benefit. And I think that the most important thing here, Dana, is it goes to Kamala Harris's judgment. Tim Walz is ultimately going to be the vice president. Kamala Harris is in great health. I'm sure she's going to be president if she wins for 4 or maybe even 8 years. Why did Kamala Harris choose a person who has lied about their military service? I think that is a serious lapse in judgment. And I don't want to hear from a campaign spokesperson of Kamala Harris. I want to hear Kamala Harris herself address what I just said.
I've seen a lot of statements from veterans, including those you served with, saying it's just untoward to be criticizing somebody who served for 24 years.
Dana, I'm not interested in the ad hominem. I've heard from a lot of veterans groups who criticize Tim Walz. The question is, he said he served in war, and he didn't. That is a dishonesty. I couldn't care less what one or the other person says about it. I care about what the truth is. The truth is that Tim Walz didn't tell the truth. And importantly, Dana, this is about Kamala Harris's judgment. And I think that when you ask, why has Kamala Harris allowed the border to be wide open? Why has Kamala Harris supported policies that have promoted the increase in inflation? I think it goes to the heart of her judgment, and I think that that's what we should be talking about.
One last question. Donald Trump didn't serve in the military. He received a medical draft deferment for bone spurs to avoid serving in the Vietnam War, reportedly as a favor to his father. Do you find that shameful, too?
I think that Donald Trump didn't serve in the military, but he didn't lie about it, Dana. I've known Donald Trump for a long time. He really honors our veterans. He honors me for my service. Donald Trump didn't lie about serving in the military. He didn't say that he went to Vietnam when he didn't. This is the problem. I don't criticize anybody. Whether they served our country or not, I think it's honorable to serve, but obviously a lot of people have reasons for not serving. I criticize somebody for embellishing their record, for lying, saying, I went to war. Dana, do you think that it's a problem that he said, I went to war, but he didn't actually? That seems to be a problem to me.
Well, they've corrected that. Let's move on to...
They've corrected it by admitting that he lied.
Let's move on to another important issue to voters, and
Please.
that is the issue of abortion. You wrote the foreword for a new book by Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts.
Sure.
Of Project 2025. Project 2025, among many other things, calls for rolling back approval of the abortion drug mifepristone. Donald Trump told me during the debate that he would not block the drug. And on Thursday, when he was asked, he didn't rule it out. So which is it?
Well, look, Dana, first of all, Project 2025 is not affiliated with the Trump campaign. Kevin Roberts is a friend of mine, but I wouldn't say that he speaks for the president in the same way I wouldn't say that he speaks for me. Now, what Donald Trump has said is that he respects the Supreme Court's opinion on the mifepristone ruling.
But let me just stop you right there.
Please.
The Supreme Court, you're a lawyer, so you know this better than I.
Sure.
The Supreme Court, all they did was say that what came to them didn't have standing. So they let it stand. A real question, a substantive question, hasn't made it to the Supreme Court. So my question for you is whether or not a Trump-Vance administration would allow mifepristone to continue to be sent around the country.
Well, President Trump won the nomination of the Republican Party. He said it to you, and he said it repeatedly, that his goal is not to block mifepristone, it's to let states make the decision on abortion policy. Now, of course, that does mean, Dana, we have to be honest about this, that California might have less restrictive rules than Ohio, which might have less restrictive rules than Alabama. I think what President Trump is really trying to do on the abortion question is really admirable, and I wish the press was a little bit more honest about it. He's saying we've had a 50-year culture war over abortion, where unfortunately this issue has just divided the country, and he wants to provide some ground for us to come together, for states to make these decisions, for voters to make these decisions, and for us all to respect one another. That's all he's
on
proposed.
that issue. On that issue.
I'm gonna stop it there. But you see how they kept trying to walk, or Dana Bash kept trying to walk him into a trap, and he wasn't taking the bait. Now, I want to hop over to an ABC interview, because I don't want to make this video crazy long. That interview went on for another 11 minutes, which I'm not about to sit and watch, because it's literally just what you just saw there. Her trying to walk him into a trap and throw all these, oh, what about abortion? Trump's going to ban abortion, even though Trump has come out and said, hey, it's not up to me. That's what the Supreme Court said. It is up to the state. Individual folks will vote on it. And Ohio brought up a vote on it. What was that? Was it last year? No, I think it was the year before last. So that's what Trump said. He says, we will respect what the states say. But of course, they keep trying to pin it on them because they know that it's a divisive issue and they know that they're losing. Same thing with this Project 2025. They know Trump has nothing to do with that. They know Trump has his own personal agenda that's on his campaign website. They've done this research, but they know that they're losing, so they have to lie about it. Oh, we got to pin this on Trump, because if you say something enough, it starts to stick in people's minds if you just repeat it enough. All right. But like I said, let's jump over to this ABC interview. Let's jump into it.
Way for us to come together as a country over a very tough issue.
But this should be, I assume this is an easy one for you. I mean, you've been very clear about how you feel about abortion. I mean, if you've compared it to slavery.
I didn't compare it to slavery,
well,
John.
The impact on the society to slavery, yes.
Ask the question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, just again, the idea of codifying, whatever the state, codifying a right to abortion up to about 24 weeks, isn't that something you oppose?
Well, look, in Ohio, we had a referendum in the state, and
you made your position
and I aggressively advocated for the pro-life view because I want to save as many babies as possible. Also, importantly, John, the people of Ohio decided by about a 60-40 margin to reject the pro-life framing, and you have to respect the will of the people. That's all that Donald Trump has said. That's what I believe. And as someone who really does want to say, John, I do want us to become a more pro-family country. I want us to have more babies and more families. I want our neighborhoods to be filled with the laughter of children and thriving families. We and the pro-life community, I think, have to figure out how to better make our case to the American people and how to make it easier to have a baby. It's way too expensive. Housing is through the roof. Medical costs are through the roof. President Trump and I have actually advanced a series of policies that would make it easier for us to have families. I think that's where we're focused on as a presidential ticket. And as the president has said, on abortion policy specifically, the states are going to make up their minds.
And Donald Trump.
Well said. And I said that, right? I said that. That is the way that you have to go about this issue. Because I've seen people, and I won't name names, that have tried to criticize Trump for taking the stance that he has taken. And I'm like, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, if you truly want to save lives, if that is your ultimate goal, right? If that is your ultimate goal, then you would be voting for Trump, because obviously Kamala has advocated for just open, unfettered abortion anytime, whatever, doesn't matter. And she's not going to try to even slightly convince anybody of anything otherwise, right? So that's not an option. So your only other option is Trump, who, as you just heard JD Vance say, I've said the exact same thing. That's the way you have to go about it. You have to live up to what you promise. Don't lie to people, right? And that's what he said. They're not going to lie to folks. The states get to decide. Not going to touch it. I'm hands off. I'm not going to lie to folks. I may feel differently about it, but I'm not going to lie to you and say I'm going to do one thing, but then do another. But what I am going to do is I'm going to try to re-educate the public on what this actually is, what it entails, how bad it actually is. I'm going to try to re-educate the public on the ramifications of this and how great it is to actually have a family and to have kids. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put some legislation together to make it easier to have a family, to make it easier to have kids, to make it more prosperous to have children, right? And so that is the way you go about it. And then you represent the question a couple years down the line while you're in office. Hey guys, how do you feel about this now? Like, you're not going to win by planting your flag. We saw that when there was supposed to be a red wave and it was just a mist. It was because of that issue alone. So I agree with JD Vance and Trump and them taking the stance that they're taking, because you can't take a hard stance on this. It's just not that time in America. The way that we save lives is by representing the question a few years down the line once we've re-educated the public. And we've passed some legislation to make having kids easier. That's the way it's got to be done. That's the way that we win. That is the path to winning and actually saving lives, not just talking about it, right? Because people can bump their gums all day long, but how are you actually going to execute that? Don't talk about it, be about it, right? You just talking about, oh yeah, I want to save kids' lives, and Trump shouldn't take that stance. That doesn't save any kids. Doesn't save anybody. But with the stance that they're taking and what I just described, that actually saves lives in the long run. So there you go. But let's continue on a little bit longer.
He's going to have a chance to vote on that, and he says he's going to offer his position. Didn't say what it was. Would you be disappointed if Donald Trump says that he supports a constitutional right to abortion?
I'll let Donald Trump offer his position, and I'll talk about it then.
What would you encourage him to do on that, though? I mean, this is a pretty fundamental idea for you. I mean,
John,
you've been such a leader in the pro-life movement.
What I would encourage him to do is to do what he's done up to this point, which is to try to find some common ground here and try to advance some pro-family policy so that people feel like they have more options, right? A lot of the reason that women choose to terminate a pregnancy is very often they don't feel like they have any other choice. We want to give them more options to choose to have that baby, to make it easier to raise that baby. I think Donald Trump has shown real leadership by focusing on that and not on the culture war topic of what each individual state's abortion policy should be.
You've said that Donald Trump is the greatest president of your lifetime.
He is.
Who, in your mind, is the greatest vice president of your lifetime?
It's a good question. I haven't thought much about that. I think George H.W. Bush did a very good job as vice president. You could pick a number of guys who've done a perfectly fine job, but the president really sets the tone for policy, and I think a lot more about the president than about the vice president. And fundamentally, my role in the administration is to support him in enacting the agenda. That's what I'm going to work on.
Trump was asked recently very directly, would you be ready to be president on day one?
Sure.
When he arrived. And it was notable that he didn't answer the question. Instead, what he said is the vice presidential candidate doesn't matter. I mean, what did you make when you heard him not answer that directly?
Well, he said that a million times, both in private and in public.
But he's asked really directly,
right.
Are you ready?
Most people, oh, come on, John. He's right. Most people, 99% of the country, they don't vote on who the vice presidential nominee. They're voting for Donald Trump or for Kamala Harris, not for JD or Tim Walz, right? But what I think that he does believe, because he made it the main focus of his vetting process, is, do I think this person can be president on day one if, God forbid, something happens? Yes. So I absolutely am sure that Donald Trump is confident in my abilities. I also think that he's right, that the politics of this really don't matter that much.
One of the proposals, it's in the platform, you've talked about it, Trump's talked about it, is a mass deportation. Now, I know he said, you'll start with the easy ones, the criminals, people commit crimes, deport them. But he said deporting 15 to 20 million people. How do you actually do that?
Well, John, we have to start with the fact that we have a wide open southern border because our border czar actually set a lot of open border policies. They suspended...
she's not actually, she wasn't the border czar.
Oh, that was what the media called her. She assumed the title. She had control over a lot of our border policy at a time when they were suspending... Let me finish, John. The time they were suspending deportations, they stopped Donald Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, and they reinstituted catch and release. They basically threw open the gates of our country, and now we have a ton of fentanyl, a ton of people suffering.
But how are you going to get 10 to 15 to 20 million people out of the country? Well, the first
thing you have to do is to stop the bleeding, stop the open border, get Kamala Harris out of there, and actually re-implement the Remain in Mexico policy, rebuild or finish Donald Trump's border wall, and you do that and you stop the bleeding. Now, you're right. Once you do that, once you stop Kamala Harris's open border policies, you've got to do something with the people who are already here. And I think that you take a sequential approach to it. You are going to have to deport some people. If you're not willing to deport a lot of people, you're not willing to have a border when there are 20 million illegal aliens in our country.
10 to 15 million people, this is like, I mean...
Well, John, I think that's the wrong attitude to take of it. Okay,
so you go knock on doors and ask people for their papers.
Again, but I think this is the wrong attitude towards it, right? There's 20 million people here illegally. You start with what's achievable. You do that, and then you go on to what's achievable from there. I think that if you deport a lot of violent criminals, and frankly, if you make it harder to hire illegal labor, which undercuts the wages of American workers, I think you go a lot of the way to solving the illegal immigration problem. But look, President Trump is absolutely right. You cannot have a border unless you're willing to deport some people. I think it's interesting that people focus on, well, how do you deport 18 million people? Let's start with 1 million. That's where Kamala Harris has failed, and then we can go from there.
And finally, before you go...
Perfect answer. Perfect answer. Right? You stop the bleeding that Kamala Harris caused, and, he went into that, and you saw, what's this guy's name? Jonathan Carl. You saw him cut him off as he was sticking it to Kamala, right? Because this is her administration. Make no mistake about it. We know Joe ain't running the show. We saw him. He ain't doing anything. So it's got to be Kamala, right? If not, then we got some major problems on our hands because they're skipping over Kamala, right? So this is Kamala's administration, and it's completely been failed. And like I said, you saw him cut him off there and try to get him to get back to how he was going to do it. But I love that JD Vance put it on her, stuck it on her, and then got back into the policies of it all, which, hey, I agree with it. Make it really, really difficult to hire any type of illegal, right? I also think you should take it a step further, make it, against the law for taxpayer dollars to be going towards funding any type of illegal housing or food or anything like that. And so then you deport, folks as you can, because it's going to be a difficult job to deport everybody. But you squeeze them so much to where eventually they'll voluntarily, all right, here I am, come take me. I'm ready to go back because this is just crazy. I'm out here living on the street. Well, you shouldn't have came here illegally anyway. You had a life back where you were. Come back legally the next time and you'll have all the funding you need, okay? All the resources you need. But yeah, I 1000% agree. And I love the way that he answered these questions in these two interviews. And I think he should do a whole lot more with these interviews. And, one thing that I also want to point out is this, and it's that, matter of fact, let me go back to the comments section of that video clip. Here we go. So I want you guys to read a little bit of these comments. Now, this is the same video. This is ABC. This is ABC's official account, 17.2 million, which is crazy. Can y'all hit the subscribe button? Let me get to 17 million. All right. Can I get to 17 million too? Please. All right. The media has lost all credibility. It's pathetic. In a single day, he showed media bias. JD Vance calls them out for not interviewing Kamala. Why is Kamala not facing the media? Why is it only GOP candidates only giving interviews? Kamala going into a month without a single interview. When the government can be involved in your decision about your family, we have lost our freedom. These questions are ridiculously biased. Vance mopped the floor. Mopped the floor with this third-rate reporter. The real question is, where's Kamala? So, JD Vance did a fantastic job, because even on ABC's YouTube channel, official YouTube channel, even the comments are showing that he got embarrassed. I mean, even if you want to look at these likes, there's 1.8K likes for a video that had 150,000 views. Yeah. That says a lot. But also, here, let me bring up, because you can also see the dislikes. Now, you got to do it a little roundabout way, but let me try to bring this up. JD Vance ADC. Because I want to show you the, or look at the dislikes. Yeah. 1.8K likes, but it has 758 dislikes. This is their official YouTube channel. Like, that is a terrible ratio. Terrible ratio. To put that into perspective, like, my videos typically garner a 99 to 1 ratio, 98 to 2 ratio, like 98% likes versus 2% dislikes, or 99% likes to 1% dislikes. That's my typical ratio. 1.8K likes to 700. Where was that number? 758 dislikes. Incredible. But as always, y'all let me know your thoughts, your opinions. Y'all stay safe out there. Peace and love. I'm out.